Good evening and welcome back to the Conservatarian Exchange on the Liberty Block. We are currently hosted by the Department of Eds, by Dick, and we have a special guest coming to us, I believe, from Texas by the name of Mr. Good, Ken Good. Ken, if you could introduce yourself with a 30-second elevator speech, that'd be great. And I know people are itching to talk about something.
Sure. My name's Ken Good. I am an attorney from Texas. I specialize in bail law. I've written articles across the country on what is good bail reform, what's bad bail reform, mostly, and on the issue of criminal justice reform, what works, what doesn't work. I'm married. I have to another attorney, and we have two daughters. That's the 30-second summary.
Okay, and your interest is pretty much criminal law.
But it's mostly criminal justice reform law, the bad stuff, soft on crime policies in our urban areas and how those have actually increased crime and actually hurt the very minority they say they're trying to help.
You ever been to a place called New York?
I know the New York system very well. I've written articles about it, and they've rolled it back 3 or 4 times, and it's still probably going to be the key issue in the upcoming election. So,
Good.
yeah.
I'm in New York, but Ed has been in New York for a little bit now as well, coming back to New York, and he's got plenty to say about that. Anyway, I know everybody, I was about to say something horrible. Everybody wants to speak about the Charlie Kirk tragedy. I know that. I know we got all kinds of feelings, so we will let people express those as well as thoughts if they can collect them in the aftermath so quickly after such a horrible incident. So,
I do have a quick question for Ken, if we can. You talked about the impact of those reforms on the very communities that they're supposed to help. Well, what about the impact on the actual youth offenders by not taking them under, giving them maybe the harsher punishment as kids to set them straight before they get into the more significant crimes?
One of the things they started these soft on crime policies and that these soft on crime DAs adopted were we're not going to treat minors as adults. And then some states, even I think New York's one of them, they passed statutes to prohibit that. And as a result, organized crime gangs, they go out and recruit from those uh, groups to commit their most heinous crimes. So here's my point, or one of my points is when you enact things that prevent judges from addressing organized crime gangs and career criminals, then those groups will find ways to take advantage of it. That's exactly what they did with the subject you're talking about.
I don't think that I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to use the phrase soft on crime. That might have described the left 30 years ago in the 90s and the 80s and 70s. They're no longer soft on crime. They are weaponizing crime to create chaos and to create terror and to create fear. Um, so, I think that
I think it's a coalition. And I think part of the coalition that supports that, I agree with you on, but I think part of the coalition is true believers, and they think that, and there's part of the coalition that thinks that we've got to do this restorative justice. We've got this history, which I disagree with, that we've got systemic racism, which I disagree with. And so I think there's a bunch of different groups that makes up that majority that got that started. And I think you're seeing it collapse and fall apart. And I think the most vocal group that's left, I agree with you there. And the Charlie Kirk thing that's happened today um, probably underscores that what you're saying is one possible conclusion of that. If they can't respond to your arguments and they think you're making headway, they will try to take you out. I think President Trump would agree with that from 2 attempts.
gotcha. Ed P, I'm going to give you the floor for a couple of minutes. I know there's a lot you wanted to say about it.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, it was just a horrible day. I can't believe that someone would do this. It's been a year since President Trump was shot and almost killed in exactly the same way. And I just don't understand how someone like Charlie Kirk, who was, a moderate conservative. He was not a radical by any stretch of the imagination. Goes to universities and holds talks and talks with people and tries to argue his position. I mean, if that isn't the most American thing ever, I don't know what is. So
Why they killed him?
whoever shot him is you know the essence of anti-Americanism, really. And I just don't understand how, and we were arguing a little bit in the chat. This was a planned operation. This was not some guy spontaneously taking out a pistol and shooting him. This guy, in the time we've been on, reports have come out, including video of a guy on the roof about 125 meters away, setting up for the shot. And so he had to get up on the roof. He had to figure out a way to get up on the roof. He had to know where Charlie was going to be positioned. He had to do all of the intelligence prep work before. This was not a random act of violence. The arena murder was a random act of violence, a common random act of violence in today's world. But this was a political assassination, just like the assassination attempt for Trump, because Charlie was very effective. Now, I didn't particularly like the guy one way or the other. I didn't really follow him. I know I have friends who worked with TPSA, and everybody had nothing but nice things to say about the guy. I mean, you might not agree with all of his opinions, but what does that mean as far as shooting him is concerned? I'm shocked. I don't even know what to say after something like this. It's just absolutely appalling.
You understand the spirit in which I say this. We're never going to know the motive, correct?
Of
I think
course
we
we
already know the
motive.
motive. I think we already know the motive.
He's
I mean,
being
it's not.
half facetious. It's a
Oh,
mystery.
you mean?
We could have no idea
That's
why
what I
that
mean.
person
We
did
don't know the
that.
Oh
motive of
yeah.
Vegas, and we don't know the motive of the trans shooting, and the press will.
Oh, we have no idea why that guy killed Irina too. If you listen to the Brown, I think his name was, who killed Irina. According to the mainstream media, we have no idea why he would do that. But
I guess
whatever it
they didn't
is,
hear the
it was
video where he says, "I
institutional
got that."
racism.
I guess they didn't see the video where he said, "I got that white girl."
Well, we
Well, they
didn't hear the
certainly didn't
video where the
show
guy
the
said
video.
Allahu Akbar either, but we still don't know the motive.
All the Allahu Akbars, you have to ignore that part too.
And we
We
still
don't know
don't
the
Yeah,
know
I
the
motive.
mean,
motive. The
they don't show the video. I don't know whether they
everything's a
haven't
media
seen it.
fight, and how the media is already spinning this Charlie Kirk thing. Already, people.
Can I
that
say Republicans pounce? And some of them are
We're
saying
pouncing. I was just
Republicans
gonna say
will
that.
pounce. If you guys know Dan Bongino, if you follow Dan Bongino, I think one of his great contributions was Republican pounce. And I think NBC is saying Trump is going to use this in the future to impose some horrible things on us. Republicans will pounce in the future. That's the next level of the insanity.
Boy, I only hope so. If only their accusations were true.
Well, we'll get a lot of rhetoric, I assume. I mean, you know, again, 3 hours ago, the big story to talk about was the Charlotte murder, and that's now kind of faded. Will either of these two make any change for real? I mean, there's so many angles to both of these stories.
Well, I think right now you see the Democrats running scared. I mean, as quickly as they came out to denounce political violence, they're running scared because I mean they're the
Bingo.
ones throwing the seeds or sowing the seeds of political violence. I mean, every time I hear Trump is a threat to democracy, I'm like, no, he's a threat to Democrats. That's the only threat he is, and thank God he's a threat to them.
Well, this sort of terrorism in the modern world started with the left in the French Revolution, and then morphed, went east to the Soviets, and then back from the east into the Middle East and to the West with the terrorism in the 60s, and then more terrorism now. And I think that terrorism as a concept has always been a leftist phenomenon.
You mean kind of like
I,
the group in Portland pushing the guillotine through the streets?
Mhm.
yeah, they at least they know their history. At least they know their heritage. That the problem is like, when the 9/11 attacks happened, which were obviously Islamic terrorism, the government clamped down on the American people, not, Islamic radicals. In fact, the amount of immigration from Islamic countries doubled or tripled after the attacks. That doesn't sound like someone is clamping down on Islamic radicalism.
Well, it did send billion-dollar bombs to Afghanistan, Iraq, Saudi, whatever, and maybe pay for it. So I didn't appreciate spending the billions on the clampdown, but I agree they did punish us with the Patriot Act more than they punished
Yeah,
the terrorists.
right. So I mean, the issue with like all of us thinking between, Irina is just the latest in the long line of sort of random black on white girl violence. Um, I mean, it's there's so many victims. Uh, a lot of violence is gang related. A lot of violence is spousal, interpersonal relationship. But when it comes to random public violence, it's almost entirely black on white, and it's almost entirely, and most of that is black men against white women.
That one more an example of the mental health crisis in the country.
Yeah,
And the way that they're using that in the criminal justice system now is to King's X the criminal case. So we're decreasing our prison population because we're just dismissing the criminal case if they have a mental health issue. And that's the reason why he had such a long criminal history and he never got he had very small amounts of time in jail or prison. But I think
I
that
have this.
Charlie Kirk is a different example. It's an example of the political violence from the left that is being stoked by the party and then now denying it. But the real way to honor Charlie Kirk, I think, today is to talk about why he was so effective. Why would they target him? And the reason why is because he didn't go into these colleges with any armor. Which he just went in and dressed like them and just said, "Here is an issue. Let's talk about it. This is the position I'm going to take. Talk me out of it." And it was almost like the Democrats would send people with talking points because they could never overcome his arguments with talking points. And so they never had somebody that was actually a true blue believer that was able to go up against him and overcome his arguments. And
Well,
He
the
was
most effective
31.
was when you
I
got
He
a
was
big
31
circle.
years old.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at
he was 31 years old.
Yeah.
He had two small kids. Speaker Johnson, I'm not a fan, asked for a moment of silence in the House of Representatives today, after Kirk's assassination, and the Democrats protested. I mean,
Whoa.
you can hear them protesting, screaming.
Well, you
And
almost
I'm
want
like,
to go to them if they would just enforce existing laws, this would not have happened.
I've seen, to your point, Ken, I've seen a chart that shows the the population of Americans in mental health or clinics and hospitals, and it I guess I got to do it reverse, but it sort of it goes like this, and then it goes down to almost nothing, and then superimposed on this is a chart of the number of people in prison, and it starts down here, and then it goes up like that. There's almost a perfect match between the the
cause and effect.
freeing the freeing, and let's be honest, I'm gonna pick on Alu here. It was libertarians who said there's no such, Thomas Sass, who says there's no such thing as mental illness, and you just got to let these people go. And what they ended up doing is going into our prison system where they're not treated, they're not helped. I'm not saying that this guy Brown who murdered Arena should be coddled by any stretch of the imagination. He needs to be locked up forever. But on the other hand, it would be nice if he had gotten help, 14 arrests ago rather than now.
I'm really glad you brought up those charts because I think we get the criminal justice system gets criticized by the number of people in prison, and that's the best response is if you want to know the number of people in prison, you've got to also count all the people that have mental health issues that we're keeping in prison because that's the cheapest way to house them because we got rid of our insane asylums, but I think we got rid of them not because of libertarians, we got rid of them because we weren't funding them. And people, I mean, whenever a county or a state needed to cut their funding to make it up somewhere else, they were cutting their funding. And so they were being run in squalor. We had people that died from starvation when, they were not, I mean, it was just dirty places. And so class action lawsuits probably are what took them down. But that wasn't the solution. And now putting them all in prison, that's just the only option at this point. They should not be on the street. And so this criminal justice reform era that we've gone through, and I think we're coming to the end of, is saying, well, we should King's X when they have a mental illness because they don't need to be in prison. There's nowhere else for them to go. Until there is, that's where they should go.
Well,
Guys,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
that's
want
only
to
one
name
side.
expertise, but I did work in prison and I am in the mental health field, and there really aren't a lot of solutions. You can't force treatment on a patient. And even
Well, you
so,
can't unless you keep the hammer of the criminal justice system on them to say either go to get treatment or we will send you to
they're
prison.
back in jail.
Yeah, okay. Well, you got the same thing at the revolving door. They get into jail, they get on their medications, they
I
get
don't think there is,
control, they get
really,
released, they
I
get
hate to
off
say
their
it,
medication, and they're back in jail.
there really isn't much of an answer to this problem.
No, there's no perfect solution to some things, especially mental illness. There's no
No,
perfect
I mean,
solution.
as someone who's dealt with people with mental illness, they need help, but they also need imprisonment sometimes when they're a danger
Sometimes
to
they do it,
themselves or
yeah.
others. And the issue is, there are people, the medicalization of everything in our society, I think, has taken a turn in the sense that it says there's no such thing as evil in the world. There's no such thing as a person deciding to be deliberately malicious and do something evil. It's all, oh, it all must be mental illness. But there is a difference between someone who's psychotic and someone who is evil. And, the psychotic people should go here and the evil people should go there. And
Even the Bible teach that we're all sinners until we're saved by grace. So we started out evil. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, we have the reformers saying, well, these are basically good people. They're all going to come to court with if we just tell them to come to court. No, we're all basically evil unless we decide to turn towards God. And so these reforms are just based on, a terrible premise.
Guys,
Well, we're going
listen, until you wipe out 90% of the psychology and psychiatry profession, turning any of this over to them is just going to make it worse. My
Absolutely.
experience in prison was as a social work intern in a wonderful place called Patuxent Institution. I don't know if anybody ever heard of it. And it was a psychotherapeutic milieu prison set up by the state of Maryland, where if you got into their program, you could be there for multiple murders, multiple life sentences, play the system, and be out in 3 years. And the whole system worked to play the game. The therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists were mostly liberals who loved to play the game. The prisoners knew exactly how to play the game. And the whole thing was just a disaster. And it imploded because somebody on a work release raped some woman, at which point the Maryland legislature all got together and said, we didn't know we had such a program. Who let that happen? As politicians do. You know what, Al?
I remember when I was a baby taking the first of the criminal justice courses in college. One of the reasons for punishment is incapacitation. There's rehabilitation and stuff, but some people do need to be incapacitated, meaning life in prison or maybe even execution, which I'm almost willing to come back around to coming back to supporting it as a libertarian. I disavowed it years ago, but because the government makes some mistakes, and even one mistake is for many when it's death. But I'm with someone like seeing Brown killing Irina and the others. I'm almost willing to have a discussion of if it's on video and they're not disputing who it is, not even appealing the conviction, we can go ahead and kill him probably. So I think some people, I think Dick and Ken and everyone was talking about psychotic versus evil. I do think there's some evil, not having mental illness. And I barely even know Thomas Saz. I have one of his books in my Amazon cart, but I haven't even read any of his stuff, so I don't know anything about him.
He had
But
a tremendous effect in the 60s,
okay,
to be honest.
What was
you
called
can't
the
blame
myth of
me for the.
mental illness.
I didn't even know the guy,
He was a
and
nut.
he's older than me.
I
But
was
yeah, I think some
teasing
people
you,
do
Alo.
believe incapacitated.
As the
Yeah, I mean, he was
resident
bona fide nut.
anarcho-capitalist,
So
I
you can
was
blame
kind
me
of
for everything,
teasing you.
huh?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
mean,
know.
you know, we can lock up psychotics forever, but then under what law, under what system? It really
Yeah,
is.
so they're psychotic. They go in a mental home with thick walls and gates,
But how do you
but
keep them there
evil
forever?
in a
problem
prison.
with
That's the
that,
problem.
no constituency for that. So there's going to be a high level of
Yeah.
fraud.
No.
There's going to be a high level of kickbacks. I mean, it's just going to run abound because there's no constituency for that for people to follow.
There's also, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm wealthy, but not independently like, Musk or something. Who wants to fund all of this? You guys want to fund all of this to the tune of $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year per person?
How much is your family's life worth?
Well, we're already funding it. I'm sorry, Stephen. We're already
I
funding
think
it in
prison's
prison.
cheaper than the hospitals.
My problem is
Yeah, the
this.
hospitals
It's
are
like
expensive. That stuff's expensive.
Yeah,
I'm not
what
saying
we're
the
doing,
hospital.
but what we're doing right
It's
now with the prisons is cheaper than building insane asylums. I mean,
yeah.
and have
And
staffing.
we don't want to pay for it either, let's be honest.
No.
Yeah, there are lots, going back to what Alice said, there are lots of theories of justice. It's like what is the purpose of incarceration, right? Or is it to punish someone? A lot of people think it's to punish them. And I'm not one of those people. It's God's job to punish them.
So
And the other thing is to rehabilitate them. Not my thing either. I think that the purpose of incarceration is segregation.
Right,
It's
protecting
like
society.
they have shown that they are not willing to abide by the common decency, not just the laws, but the common understanding of a rational society. So they have to be put outside the society. And whether it's to transport them to Australia or the moon or to put them in prison, they need to be taken outside. And the insane people are the same way. And the founders agreed with this, by the way. They are not there was no distinction between people who are not of sound mind and criminals in the founders' mind. They need to be segregated
Yeah,
away.
I think that's incapacitation. I think that's
Yeah,
with that
yeah.
category.
So I mean, it's like if we just do Escape from New York, I think that would be fine.
let's
So-
go back.
Favor,
let's
I
go-
mean, I agree with punishment, but I agree with rehabilitation. But the problem with it is the government as a whole is terrible at determining who's been rehabilitated.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I
they
haven't
can't
read the
really do
book.
that.
What was the book by somebody in Salmon now? I can't, it was like the seminal book on psychopaths. The odds of rehabilitating a psychopath are like 1 in a billion.
Yeah,
And
so
especially
let's
once
go
they're in the
back.
prison system, it's even worse. But my question is going to be, who gets to be the judge of who
Yeah.
is psychotic and who is evil? And we have to clean the entire
The
judicial.
judge.
So this is simple. Let's go back to Locke. What's the purpose of government in the first place? We formed government to provide protection for our persons and our property. If you got people that can't live in society, then you lock them up. I mean, this is not something new. This has been around for thousands of
But
years.
Dick, who's going to do it? Judges, juries? A jury.
Look in
a
the
jury
Old
doesn't
West, we had
do-
posses that would do. We'd have, they kept go get them, find them, and then kill them. I
They
mean,
were very different Americans. And
aren't we going back to that? If you won't give me justice, then I will get justice from my friends, my
well,
own posse.
somebody
No.
on this very show last week who won't be named was wondering why we don't bring back duels. But yes, you can't have posses without men. And we have brought up generations of not men.
Oh,
That's
there's
the reason
plenty
why
of men
we
left to
enacted
do it,
criminal
but
laws. The criminal laws weren't to protect. I mean, they were to protect the criminal defendant after they got arrested.
So, and we've spent a lot of time here on mental health. Mental health is only a fraction of it. I would say your bigger issue in crime is drugs.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And we had to have free drugs. The 60s
Yeah.
there, and look at the issues since that point in time.
And
I
even
would venture a
marijuana.
guess, and somebody that is more knowledgeable in the prison clientele can maybe correct me, but I would venture a straight guess that 75% of those incarcerated are involved with drugs.
Well, but
The
Brown's
interesting
mother,
thing is,
I mean, it wasn't Brown's mother. I mean, I agree with you on the drug issue. I mean, I have a sister who had a car accident. She broke every bone in her face and started a 30-year prescription drug addiction. I tried to get her put in jail when I was a very young attorney and I had no money because that was the poor man's rehab. And all this criminal justice reform, bail reform has really taken that option away. And so the families, poor families no longer have the poor man's drug rehab. And so we're losing a generation as a result.
I would argue that
yeah,
we've already lost 2 or 3 generations.
just to break in, Cash Patel has said that they have a suspect in custody.
Okay.
They have
I hate to
no
say
data.
the file is on his desk or on her desk, but I don't have a lot of faith in anyone anymore, including your girl Pam.
What do you call it?
Not my girl.
We have to talk a little bit about the media coverage. So somebody who can't be named on the show, seriously, but somebody who's a very, very staunch conservative, um, less libertarian than conservative, but a true conservative, wrote, "I am pro First Amendment. I've had enough of these flagrantly Marxist networks. I hope the Trump administration does everything possible to destroy them." And this is coming from somebody who really surprises me for saying it. Are people so fed up? And again, I don't know that there's any mechanism to change the media, which is so responsible for this in so many ways, both in pushing it and in covering for it. Ed M always argued, probably correctly, none of this is a suicide pact, and we gotta fight back, if I understand his way of looking at it. And maybe we have to break the First Amendment to beat these people. I don't know. But what do you do?
I mean, what you're talking about, Ed and Ken, is just loosening a tiny bit the incitement laws, like with the Massachusetts girl who had her boyfriend commit suicide, which was a very complicated case for me for First Amendment stuff. But I think, she did deserve some punishment. She went to jail for 3 years. I think for the media inducing violence by calling them Nazis and putting a target on them and saying maybe they should be killed. Again, I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I'm writing a book. I'm finishing it up now about absolutism, but I'm almost so fed up. I'm willing to have a conversation about if the media really incites enough violence to get people killed, maybe we should have a discussion about some accountability for the media, whatever
I'm
that might be.
hopeful. I'm hopeful on this issue. And I became hopeful because when Trump closed the border and we didn't need a new statute, we just needed a new president. And then I made the argument, look, we can do the same thing on crime. And so we just need the right, the people enforcing the laws. And then what do we have? We had Trump federalize the DC police. And what do you know? Overnight, he did what everybody was saying couldn't be done. And so I think what you're talking about, I still have hope. I think it can change because I've seen too many changes. And I think the country is not. I mean, I'm reacting very terribly to what happened today, and I think there's a lot of people that are just. One of my employees mentioned it, and I don't consider them conservative at all. They were very upset about it. I mean, Kirk was given credit for getting a lot of the youth vote to vote for Trump in larger numbers. So I think this is going to sit very poorly with the same people he influenced, and I know it's going to sit poorly with all the other conservatives. So I'm hopeful that there can be change without being radical.
Yeah, I mean that's the basic idea of conservatism, right? Is gradual reform rather than a revolutionary change. And I think that the people who want Caesarism essentially are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The baby being our society of rights and freedoms. If and that's kind of, we were talking earlier about kind of what happened after 9/11 is instead of preventing Muslim extremist immigration because it was an immigration failure, And instead of punishing the Saudis who funded the terrorists, we punished normal everyday people, you know, normal everyday Americans who are now spied on and tracked and you know,
Set the
and
stage
so
for what happened with Trump.
and it's at the state and it's you know there it's the memes, you know, the memes of there was one about the arena murder. As there's a photo of the murderer and stabbing arena, and then three other black people around it, and it race swapped all of them, so it's just a white guy and a bunch of black people, and said Netflix under it, and like yeah, I mean that's kind of it, and that's kind of been our ruling class, and if you know if our ruling class is bad, the European ruling class is worse. Is they have race swapped everything. They you know they blame Christians for Muslim terror. They've blamed Jews for Palestinian terror. They've blamed whites for black crime, and everything gets twisted by the media. Now, if there is some constitutional way to destroy the mainstream media, I'm in favor of it. But like Alu, I don't want the government to be. I mean, if there's
That's a
some sort of
slippery slope.
subsidy, if there's some sort of subsidy we're giving the mainstream media that keeps them afloat, then yeah, take that subsidy away. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, how often how do you hold the mainstream media accountable? You get rid of the laws that protect them from libel,
yeah, get rid of New York Times versus Sullivan.
But even that, you have to be careful. I mean, you got to be careful about that, because when you start talking about language being insightful, then where does it end? Because they can go after us for our podcast. Right now, well, it's hate.
Right, we were deplatformed, exactly.
The lawyers among us will show that incitement is something that's imminent, not something
right.
that
is. Go shoot that guy.
Go shoot that guy now. You know,
that's a different story.
So I mean, that's the thing. I wish there was some. You know,
I mean, we live in a free society where you know, liberty is dangerous.
We know
Mike,
that.
Right before you got on, I was saying I'm a First Amendment absolutist, and I technically argue I'm the only one in the world who's the absolutist on it. But that being said, I'm almost willing to have a discussion on these media companies like NBC, CNN, saying, you know, Kirk and Trump and people like you and me, Mike and Alu, are, you know, such radical Nazis, they're horrible, maybe we should kill them, and wink and a nod, and let's go kill them, inciting violence, and then we're killed the next day. Should they be held accountable in some way? I don't know, maybe, but I'm at least willing to talk about that now, whereas I was not recently, because listen, it's all out war. I mean, some principles
unless there's a call to action, I don't see how you can do that.
So
they'll use it against us.
I know. You know, let's make an analogy. In the criminal justice reform, you know, the biggest argument from the other side is we need to get rid of qualified immunity for the police. And the problem is, if you get rid of the qualified immunity, who's going to be a policeman? Because any activist group that has any money can fund litigation to play games, and then it's a jury question. And so this is the same issue, I think.
Well, wasn't it John Adams who said the Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people?
And that ship sailed decades ago.
And so as a people, and I include whites as well as migrants and blacks in this, I think we're no longer a moral and religious people. So what is left? It's Caesarism or communism. And I don't want either. You know, I don't want either.
But isn't the next country after a democracy in the development cycle, isn't that always a dictatorship?
Yeah, Caesarism, basically. Yeah, that's and for the same reason that Caesar took over. Caesar happened to be. I point to Caesar as a good dictator because he was a good dictator, but he was a dictator. There are plenty of bad dictators, like, you know, good dictator Pinochet, good dictator, you know, but there have been plenty of Franco, decent dictator. But in the history of humanity, almost all of them have been bad.
Now, has the media caught the gun control since Kirk was killed, or they haven't yet?
No, not yet. I'm not going to advocate anything, but this is just an observation. You don't use the legal process to fight a war, and the left has declared war on us. So all this talk about the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, how we deal within the Constitution for dealing with this threat that's within our borders, in my opinion, is beside the point. There are people that are making war on us that are completely okay, not just with individual violence, but with systemic violence, coordinated violence, and the criminal justice system is not the place where that problem is going to be solved.
So
And
what
I'll
do
leave
you,
it at that.
what,
So tell us how it's going to be solved, Ed.
Where's the place?
That's the problem.
I'm not going to say anything more. That's as much as I want to say.
I get it.
No, I mean, the ancient Greeks, the Romans rather, Republican Romans had this idea that they would, when there's a crisis, they would bring in a dictator for six months only, and he would set the, and it worked a number of times in Roman history until it didn't. Like all things that work until they don't. And again, I'm not advocating for dictatorship, but there does seem to this crime is down from its 2020 high, but random crime is still and now political assassination is still a serious issue, and that has to be
Ed,
stopped. I mean, it has to be
Ed,
stopped.
the crime is
Wow.
part of the violence. It's not just the targeted assassinations. Crime has been weaponized against us. And
Yeah, it's
Trump-
deliberate chaos. It's deliberate chaos. Absolutely.
Correct. I think it's more than that, but that's definitely a big part of it. And it's time for Trump to stop talking about what he's going to do in Baltimore and what he's going to do in Chicago and what he's going to do in New York. He's the goddamn president of the United States. We are being attacked on a daily freaking basis. It's time that he deal with the domestic enemies that are attacking us
So
every single day.
apparently he just won the court case in California that he can bring federal troops in, which is what he lost a few days ago, I believe, correct?
We got a stay from the Supreme Court, I think yesterday, of that ruling.
But I mean, Ed, there's a difference between the violence that's going on in cities versus the political violence of the sort that we saw today with Charlie Kirk. Right? I mean, Trump can order the National Guard into these cities to fight crime, but how are we going to stop some assassin who I heard was like 200 yards away, or the assassination attempts on Trump and all that happened that
When
we
you
still
start
have a lot of
talking-
answers to?
Let's just go back to what we were talking about on this podcast 5 minutes ago. The media is inciting this violence. The media is pushing it. The leftist politicians are pushing it. This is a coordinated effort. We are like three blind mice to not see that and to not act on it. This isn't just random acts of violence. Whether it's the crime in the cities or the targeted assassinations, it's all one thing, and it's a war being fought and waged against good people. And it's time that good people fought back.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, as far as the media thing, 'cause I know every episode you call for New York Times to tell to be reversed. I think what you're saying as far as that front is we don't have to wholesale gut the First Amendment to hold them accountable. For instance, if there were a case brought by, let's say, Charlie Kirk's estate, his wife or something, for the lies, like actual verifiable lies, which would be defamation by CNN and NBC, and if that contributed, if a judge ruled whatever that contributed to him being killed because of radicalized people based on total lies, then allowing that case to go forward and not tossing it because it's defamation against media, public figure kind of.
Let me ask you something, Olu.
That would help.
Let me respond to that by asking you this: if you could turn the clock back to 1938, and you had an NGO that could fund a class action on behalf of Jewish people in Germany for having their rights taken away, how much good do you think that lawsuit would do?
Probably not much.
No, not at all. And that's what we're debating here. We're debating which lawsuits would make sense, which laws should be modified. this is war against our own
Yeah.
people.
And also, this is an example of how it's so difficult to decide what is a good case and what is not a good case. I mean, that would not be a good case. You would have to find a manifesto from the shooter and his possession saying, I was watching CNN and they said this and that really made me mad. And then that statement would be false before you would even get causation. Just the fact that they said something and you're wondering whether that caused this, you can't ask them to make that leap. You have to prove it because it's litigation. You're the plaintiff. You have to prove it. If you can't, then you haven't met your burden of proof. So I agree with Ed on that, or Ed M on that, because I think that's too hard. I mean, we've got to. I think one of the reasons why Charlie Kirk was targeted today was because he was making inroads with students. And
Yep.
that's the heart and soul of the future of the party. If you look at what the Democrats have been doing for the last few years, you could say their immigration policy was number one, to help their numbers in the House. And they needed help in the numbers in the House because without the help, they were going to lose. And so they were trying to help with future voters. So they needed the idea of future voters because they saw that they were going to lose. They have used identity politics to such an extent that they're now running off all the different identities that are not the far, far extremes. And so we're seeing, I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful because the criminal justice reform stuff is not sustainable. And so what we're going with right now is not sustainable. And so I'm hoping that the Democrat Party is going into a period of time where they can't win a national election. We've had that multiple times in our past. And so if we want to see what's going to happen in the future, a lot of the times we need to look into what happened in the past. And so I see the most likely result is they become so fractured, and I think that they already are there. But this could really blow them up, and I hope it does. And that's what happens. They have a period where they can't. They're a regional party.
Yeah, the only
Well,
retort to
Ken,
that is our problem the Democrats, or is our problem the Republicans?
I talked to last time I was in New York City, I was hanging out in the hotel waiting for my wife, as one does, and there was a cop there, and I started talking to him, and the hotel was right in the middle of Times Square, right? So I talked to him, and he was like, "Gotta get out of here, gotta get out of here. I can't. They're making it almost impossible for us to do our jobs. Maybe I'll go to Florida." And I think my wife could get a job in Florida. And we had this conversation standing in the shop, as I was buying like food and drinks and stuff, and he was standing there. And I think in some of these blue cities, the cops are pretty good, probably. But the Soros prosecutors are a worse, a worse problem than people think.
Yeah.
Because they drop cases, they don't have, there's these silly zero cash bail systems. There was that guy in New
Well,
York who would get arrested in the morning, would be out committing crimes in the evening, right? I mean, 100 times just the zero
Stephen, I think
cash
the
bail.
answer to your question is the problem the Democrats or Republicans. I think the problems are the activists. When you've got, I mean, I think Texas is a great example. Texas has been a Democrat state before, but it's always been a moderate Democrat state, and there's no room in the Democrat Party for moderates anymore. And so it's always been a right of center. So in Texas today, to run statewide, you have to state positions in the Democrat Party that will bring you the money from the activists. So when you state the positions, you get the money, but you no longer are going to, you kind of disqualify yourself from a statewide race. And in that situation, you'll lose by 13 points in Texas to the Republicans, unless it's somebody that the public doesn't really like very well, like Cruz on his last election. He still won by 5 points.
okay,
Well,
so
look
let's
at
see,
this
and
from
the
a
proof will be in the
perspective of,
pudding. What are the Republicans in Congress going to do after the?
I think we all know that. Nothing.
Well, and then now
Zero.
the proof that the problem.
No, and Powell, you're wrong. They're going to talk a lot about concealed carry reciprocity like they did years ago, but they're going to do
They're
nothing.
not going to talk about concealed
They're going to
carry
talk about it.
reciprocity.
so if
They
we look
are
at it
absolutely not.
if we look at
These
it
are
from
all
a
state
Democrats,
issues.
the reason why you see the Democrats freaking out today is because what's the most important thing right now? The midterm elections next year, and they are freaking out and running to say how great they're just infuriated by this. because
Where
they
are they
know how
freaking
this
out?
will
I'm not
impact
seeing
them.
them freak out.
Oh, you look at their
They
responses.
are.
Their
So
responses are all strong crime. We shouldn't have violence. They're the ones that are saying Trump is a threat to democracy. I mean, if you're a threat to democracy, you kill them. Come on.
So,
Right.
I did a
I
paper
spent-
for the folks trying to push the Convention of States. That's what it is, Convention of States. And if we look at this, what's going on right now, there are 25 red states in this nation. That's 50 electoral votes. Then you look at population and what's happening right now. Democrats have already gerrymandered as far as they can go. And that's why they're losing their mind, because Republican states are one by one redistricting.
Missouri did it today.
My
Missouri's
problem
doing it.
is
Florida
is
is
that-
going to do. Florida is starting it. That was just announced, I think, this morning or yesterday morning.
But Dick, there are states like the Dakotas that are 90% Republican, if not more, in the legislature, and they still are dominated by Democrats. So I'm
But they
not
aren't
sure
anymore.
redistricting is going to solve
I
the
think it
problem.
would, I think it would be easier if we had 10 or 15 more Republicans in Congress to pass yet another tax cut for, the banks. But I don't think it would be easy to settle this problem, which is essentially a state problem, right? These are all state problems. And they're not even state problems, they're city problems. They're blue city problems dominated by professional politicians who are grifters mostly. I mean, have you ever
I
seen
don't agree, Ed. Sorry, go
what?
ahead.
Yeah,
I don't agree.
I mean, yeah, of course they're race hustlers and grifters and whatnot. I mean, it's like they're Al Sharpton, but like 30 years later and somewhat less smart than Al Sharpton, um, and they're criminals are their constituents. There was a big march in Washington D.C. the other day against Trump stopping all of the crime. There was a
Exactly.
march. There was a march,
Right.
and it was all Karens. It wasn't black people, but black people are happy. It was
That
all
was
these
the
upper
rent
class
that was
white
the
women.
rent a crowd. That's the rent people. I mean, that wasn't a
Yeah.
true protest.
Yeah, no, of course it wasn't. But like, come on, I mean, who is marching in favor of more crime? Yeah, murder, yay, carjacking,
Well,
yay.
the people,
I mean,
that's the
this is
whole point.
crazy.
The people aren't marching for it. This is a coordinated effort by Democrat elites to make war on this country. That is what's going on. It's not a local problem. It's a coordinated effort against the United States of America.
Okay,
And
Ed,
it's going to take a federal response.
I agree with you on that part, but how does that tie into New York about to vote in Mamdani? And I don't know if this will change that even by 2 votes. The cities are voting for what they're getting.
Okay, well, if Mondani wins, Trump needs to send in the National Guard and protect people from the violence that's coming. And we need to
Why?
work to get.
Why? Yeah. Why should he?
Let them die.
Why
But
should
then
he?
they won't.
Why
I'll
should
tell
he
you.
protect him
You want
from?
a constitutional reason or a practical reason?
No, it's a political question. Why should Trump go in and save them from
Why
what they
should-
vote?
Because it's part of the United States of America.
So what?
And when Trump took his oath of office, he swore to protect the United States of America from all enemies, foreign and domestic. These are domestic enemies that are making war on the United States of America.
No,
That is
if they
something
vote for,
uniquely
if they vote for
a unique
Mamdani, they
obligation of the president.
no. If
I
they
think you're
vote
looking
for
at the
Mamdani, they get what they deserve. And
You're looking
people
at
should
Mamdani.
leave. They
You're
should
looking at
leave. They should
Mamdani
go
wrong.
Go gulp.
I think if Mondami
My-
wins, it's a sign of desperation on the Democrat Party. He got elected because of desperation. We need somebody to fight. And I think that
Dividing-
guarantees the Republicans win in the midterm and win the next national election.
Mike,
But
if we were talking about socialized medicine and economic policies, I would agree with you. The dividing line is that they have now weaponized violence and crime. And that is a direct threat to the individual rights of every citizen of New York, whether you voted for it or not. And the president has an obligation to protect all of us. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution says the federal government guarantees a Republican form of government. That doesn't mean direct democracy. It doesn't mean you get what you vote for. It means the federal government guarantees that individual rights are going to be protected in every state. That's what it means, and that's why the federal government needs to respond to this.
Yeah, but like, what does Mondami really advocate? Like government grocery stores? I mean, that's been tried. That's not going to work. I mean, he's not going to do anything. Yeah, I mean,
we expect that the crime will ensue.
Yes,
we're expecting to see the Londonization of New York if he gets elected. So when that starts
and the Chicagoization.
Okay, when that starts happening, you have more of a case of what you're saying. But
well, the Chicagoization and you know, that's racial crime, and in Los Angeles, that's also a racial crime. Different race.
Most of the crimes in the city are. But
if
you start importing Islamic rape gangs, then it's a different thing.
I could solve like 85% of violent crime if you guys are interested to hear my brilliant idea.
Okay, go.
And I don't even have to be as radical as Laser, and I'm going to use less F words. I know it's never been mentioned before by anyone ever, but people who commit a lot of crimes are very often repeat offenders, meaning those who commit murder, a lot of them have done bad stuff in the past. Obviously, there's a lot of data on this. Ken probably has the data right there on his desk. But like literally, if people who have been arrested and convicted of like 5 violent crimes, if we just put them away for 10, 20 years, you know.
Wasn't that 3 strikes and you're out?
No, California's 3 strikes was retarded because it wasn't about violent crimes. Wasn't it about like weed and drugs and crap and stupid other non-violent things? And it was a ridiculous system.
No, it was felonies.
Anyway.
It was felonies.
Felonies. It's not that way because talking about weed could be a felony. I'm talking violent crimes. If you're convicted of, I don't know, shooting someone, raping someone, killing someone, let's start with those. If you're convicted 5 times, go to prison for life. You know what I mean? Simple 3 strikes or 5 strikes, but not retarded like California. Make it with violent crimes, not all felonies, just violent crimes. Yeah. This guy, how many convictions did the brown guy have?
I think
13.
Convictions or arrests?
Arrests. Most of those were dismissed because of his. But he had spent at least 5 years in prison.
Yeah, so a few convictions for like armed robbery and stuff, which should be a few decades in prison, but whatever. But also he was currently out on bail, on PR bail, for what arrest? Some other crime, right?
Yeah, a substantial crime too.
Yep. So it's interesting he gets PR bail. It's like if anyone in the world is not trustworthy to show up without even like a bail, that's interesting that it's him.
Guys,
more because of his mental health, King's X, everything.
Guys, can I switch up topics since we spent the whole show on this, even though it's a good topic? Can we talk about, if you guys think it's important, what's going on in Poland?
I don't know. I'm not there.
Yes.
In Poland, you mean the attack by
the drones?
Some of the drones that were intended. Some of the drones intended for going to from Russia ended up going into Poland, and Poland invoked the NATO provision to respond to them. And so
I get deja vu from a year ago.
What?
Deja vu?
I don't think they ran it.
I am not a fan of the Russians, obviously, but the Russians are not omnicompetent, right? It's obviously a stupid mistake on their part. We shot the drones down. Yay, us. Let's move on. I don't think, believe me, if the Russians wanted to attack Poland, we would know it more than like a handful of drones.
I mean, the problem is that it shows you how easily something can go really wrong.
Yeah.
This happened a year ago where Ukraine mistakenly shot into Poland instead of Russia. Okay. And it was almost a NATO Article 5 type of thing.
Yeah.
Just turn the other cheek.
I assume that they're testing out what's going on. I think it was a test. I mean, you have to assume that at the very least. You can't just say, hey, it was a mistake.
This is the whole thing of the fog of war. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to decipher what the truth really is. I mean, I shared that New York Times article. I read through it, and I'm trying to have a healthy degree of skepticism because I'm not sure if we really know what the truth is. But the one takeaway I have is this is still a dangerous situation. We talked about this Ukraine and Russia war for a long time now. Our views on Putin and everything are clear, but there are times where I really waffle, and I think he's just being a real damn thug. Um, but I don't see an end in sight to this right now, and that kind of troubles me. That it's just a matter of time before something goes really wrong here, and this escalates.
Well, I think Trump's gotten a lot of criticism here, but I think that he should get a lot of credit here because he's threading the needle. He's trying to get peace with someone who really doesn't want peace and willing to
Well, that's the whole thing.
sacrifice millions of their own men to get more territory to save his own skin. And so it's not, I mean, so I think Trump is doing a masterful job here and he's not getting credit for it. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I don't know. I mean, I think right now really he hasn't pushed the ball downfield much at all. He met with him, nothing really came of it. Um,
But it
so
hasn't
I
escalated
don't.
to involve Europe. It hasn't escalated to involve the United States. He's pushing for peace. He's slow pushing the sanctions. They're going to escalate, and he's trying. I mean, thread the needle to because escalation on its own could cause devastating results and escalate the thing itself. So I
I
think
mean,
he's doing a great job. We
I don't
shouldn't
know what the
criticize.
hell Putin. I don't know what Putin wants anymore. You know what I mean? I
Putin
mean,
wants a
something.
revived Soviet Union.
Mhm.
No, he
I've been
doesn't.
saying that for months.
For years.
I'm
I still don't
disagreeing
agree
with
with
you.
that point of view, but for some reason he has an incentive to keep this war going.
Does he have an
He's
incentive to keep it going, or does he have an incentive to keep it going to preserve his skin? He didn't have an exit strategy.
I
yeah,
don't
I
know.
think there's a strong I think there's a strong point to what Ken just said is there he is under a lot of pressure, I think, from inside Russia, from his own war hawk,
Hmm.
who have an expansive view of Ukraine war and want at least all of Kherson and Zaporizhia. And I think he realizes that you know Ukraine's running out of men, but also he's running out of men without a general mobilization. So he's got people saying, "Yeah, yeah, general mobilization, general mobilization. Let's mobilize the entire society to take all of Ukraine." And then he realizes that all the smart people have left, if not all of them, and the brain drain is continuing because the borders, unlike the Soviet Union, are not closed, and they're all moving to the stands, and then from them there to Dubai or Mexico or some of these other countries that will let them in. And so he's got this huge brain drain and body drain on the one hand if they keep the war going, and he's got all these generals and ex-Soviet spies and whatnot who want to keep the war going, and he's kind of caught in the middle of this. And the thing about the United States, if we don't want to fight him directly, and I don't think we do, we have to give him some sort of exit with dignity. And I hate saying that because I don't like Putin, but if he doesn't get a victory of some sort to claim to his people, then he's going to be murdered like all the
I
other
think
Soviet.
saying is what Trump has thought, but I think as we get further along and Trump and more sanctions go into effect, I think Trump is going to get away from that. And so you had your opportunity for saving face. Now we're going to get any way we can without engaging him militarily.
Yeah, I wonder though. I mean, I have this argument all the time with people, even the people I work with. I think our military capability against the Russians right now is substantial, and that is not even taking into account any mobilization on our part. I realize that we didn't have a whole lot of success against the Houthis, but we certainly had air superiority over Yemen with F-18s, which are not. Excuse me, I have to take this call.
All right.
Militarily, we can put Russia away in a conventional war. But if we go in there and Putin starts getting his
It's
butt
gonna be a
kicked,
conventional
it
war.
will go nuclear.
Well, but also that we lose elections. We lose domestic elections if we do that. So I mean that's off the table. That's what the Democrats want, because that would have a reaction, and that puts them back into control without having to moderate.
The Democrats have been pushing this war.
Well, they have been pushing the war funding of it, but not us getting involved ourselves.
Understand.
They would like for the Republicans to do that. They'd like them to do it right now because they would love that for the midterm election. Because there would be
Well,
the backlash
that
would be huge.
it depends on the context in which something like that would escalate.
Look, the only way the public would support it is if Russia attacked us in some way. I mean, look at our history.
I mean, if it, yeah,
You attack us before we attack you, and it
Right.
would happen. And but then the support would be short lived.
we're not going to do anything unless he goes after a NATO country, and then we're forced.
Well, I would question whether that would even be enough for the public to support it. I mean, if they went after Poland, I don't know if the public would support it. And I mean, we could probably survive the next election in that scenario, but I don't know. It would be hard.
Maybe that's a great point because
Well,
the media
the
can spin it.
Democrats wouldn't have much of an argument given they're the ones been beating up Trump about saying we wouldn't support our NATO allies.
Dick, with all
You know who
due
the Democrat
respect,
media
with all due
is?
respect, the media will flip on a dime.
They will say
and
just
no
because NATO was
Democrat
attacked
will
doesn't
have
mean
ever
we have
said
to join
that.
the war.
Democrats were
So they're out there. We have to defend Ukraine, but if a NATO country gets attacked,
Yes, Mike. The media can say that with a straight face. Of course they can.
but I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
one.
Listen,
They don't
I'm as
talk out of
cynical
both
as
sides of
anybody,
their
but
mouth. They talk out of both sides of
you
their
know I'm
mouth.
as cynical as anybody, but I don't know that the public is going to turn around and buy that.
I know. Let me go to Qatar for a minute because I'm curious if anybody agrees with me. Full disclosure, Ken, I am an Israeli citizen. Obviously, I'm Jewish. I have certain strong opinions about Israel, which may not be shared by everybody, which is fine. So Israel attacked Qatar, I believe, yesterday, and maybe hopefully killed some Hamas not good people. I don't really have a problem with Trump not loving it. I don't have a problem with his coming out and saying he didn't love it, whether he knew about it or not. I have a lot of problem with his statement being unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or Americans' goals. I got a problem with that. Now, I'm not a big W fan, but W at least mouth the words, you're either with us or against us. How in the world can he say Qatar is a close ally working hard to broker peace? How about kick these terrorists out of their country, which is what we demanded. I believe that's why we went to Afghanistan, isn't it?
Exactly.
So
Very contradictory. I mean, we got some reports that the U.S. approved it and Qatar approved it. So the news reports have been all over the place on this.
Right, but even if not, and again, he can say, I'm not in favor of this attack. I don't have a problem with that. But why do we have to, in the end, I know we had this argument before, we have 1 million troops over there, blah, blah, blah. Qatar is not an ally. Qatar is an Islamist state that foments terrorism.
Yeah, but we have
Exactly.
a
I
huge
wouldn't have a
military
problem.
base. We have a huge military base there that we didn't build. We gave them the plans and they built it and completely paid for it. And we moved in and gave them billions of dollars of improvements we wanted. And they did those and paid for them as well. So we have a huge base in Qatar that didn't cost the United States a dime.
I got it. And I think we should
Okay.
send our foreign policy to the highest bidder. And if China offers to build us a base, in Taiwan, if we give them Taiwan, we should do that too.
I would have a problem with it, Stephen, and here's my thought on it. Rather than say, if you're going to say that Qatar is a sovereign country and you're opposed to bombing a sovereign country, why aren't you opposed to that sovereign country harboring terrorists? Why aren't you saying that it's wrong for that country to harbor known terrorists, especially Hamas, who Trump just over the weekend or just in the last couple of days said, this is your last warning before we unleash all hell.
How can he say that a mere month after we just bombed the living daylights out of Iran?
Because Trump has diarrhea of the
say
mouth.
that,
Don't
just
take what he
did.
says seriously.
So Trump is not a politician,
I-
even though he's president. He's not really a politician. So he but you know, everybody speaks out of both sides of their mouth. I mean, the media didn't attack Obama when he was bombing people without due process, and suddenly,
Left and right.
look what's the media saying when Trump is approving bombing, you know, these little boats full of cocaine or methamphetamines or whatever. Suddenly, they have a problem with it because these are
Yeah.
people that haven't had their due process. I mean, it's like the media talks out of both sides of his mouth. Trump talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's not as good at it because he's not really a politician at heart.
So I think that Netanyahu made an incredibly stupid move going after those folks the way he did. Going after them, I don't have a bit of problem. I don't have a bit of thought for the Palestinians. But the way he went about it, I think, was incredibly stupid.
Why do you think it was stupid?
Well, let me finish, Steve. Let me
Yeah,
finish
why?
on that.
I don't think it's stupid. I thought it was great.
Why do you think it was
What was
stupid?
the attack? I don't even know what. Can you explain what the attack was?
The Hamas leaders were in their little hotel, and so they were supposed to have a meeting, and so Israel sent a couple of bombs there, or planted a bomb there and blew them up. We're waiting to see how many of them were killed.
So Nick, why was it stupid?
Why is it stupid is because both Saudi Arabia and Qatar were ready to sign on to the Abraham Accords. They don't have any affinity for the Palestinians. Yeah, Qatar's harboring some leaders over there, but for the Palestinians as a whole, Qatar doesn't have any use for them. None of the Middle East does.
Qatar is
And that
Hamas. What are you
getting the
talking about?
Abraham Accords
Qatar is
crossed.
Hamas. Well, how can you say they have no use for them? They are Hamas. They are the principal funders of Hamas. Nobody even denies.
I understand that.
Isn't
So
the
why
answer
are
what
they-
you're saying may be true, but we won't know that for a year. In a year, it might be true, it might not be true. If they sign off on the Abraham Accords in a year, then it's not true. We don't know. It
By
might
the
be.
way, Abraham Accords are a piece of paper that can be changed in 10 seconds with an attack for any excuse whatsoever. So I don't care about the Abraham Accords. Israel has a pretty simple doctrine. You kill us, we kill you. You guys remember Munich?
Yeah.
And Israel said,
Yeah,
we're going to get every single one of you, and they got every single one of them. I don't think that's a bad thing. But again, is this different than W saying, what did we do to Afghanistan? Please remind me. Was that better or worse than what Netanyahu did to Qatar?
I don't have an opinion on that.
I don't know about better or worse, but equally justified.
Okay, but we leveled Afghanistan. Netanyahu broke one room, didn't even ruin the building, from what I understand. So why can't Israel say you're for us or against us? Give us these guys 2 years later, my friends. 2 years later, give us these guys, or we're going to take them out. I just find it kind of hypocritical. America can, Israel can't. And to tell me Qatar is working and risking things to make peace, what have they done in 2 years? All they had to do was simply close a few hotel rooms, and the whole thing would have been over. Yes, I lost everybody.
Just don't take anything so
Yeah,
seriously. He has diarrhea of the mouth. Whatever he says, he says
He's playing both sides.
crazy things.
I support Netanyahu's action. If anything, I think stronger action would have been warranted.
I have a very high opinion of Netanyahu. So if not Netanyahu wants to do it, I give him a wide berth. I supported what he did. I support what he did. I mean, I understand that, you know, they took a risk and it comes with some consequences, like Dick pointed out, or it may come with consequences. But if that's what Netanyahu thought was needed, I support it.
Like I said, him taking him out, I don't have one iota of problems. It's the way it was going about. I think it was stupid.
Do you think Qatar would be a friend of Israel?
Pardon me?
You think Qatar would be friendly to Israel?
Yes.
What evidence is there when they are the major backer of Hamas?
I agree with that. I think Qatar, you know, walks the tightrope on these issues, on a whole bunch of these issues where they play both sides. And I don't like it when people play both sides. You know, in litigation, when somebody plays both sides, you're going to get on my bad side. And so I don't like that. And so maybe that's where Trump's coming down too. But I think when he's making his most recent statement, he's playing to the public. And so I discount that.
I don't doubt for a minute that if Trump wanted those hostages out, he could get them out. I'm sorry.
Mm, I don't agree with that.
Why not?
Because I think you're
Get the
giving Trump
bodies
too
out.
much. You're giving Trump too much power. I mean, he's given them ultimatums, and I think he's given Israel a wide hand because they haven't responded. So
He has
I
not
don't.
given Qatar an ultimatum.
No, they over the hostages.
Qatar is holding the hostages. Qatar is Hamas.
Well, that's a good point, and I think that that's kind of where you lose me a little bit because I don't think that the United States believes that Qatar is Hamas.
Well, then
Uh,
they're really stupid since they are the major funder of Hamas. That's just a fact. So, and they're
well,
what's harboring them. Again, we blew up Afghanistan for harboring bin Laden. Why can't we blow up Qatar for harboring bin
Right
Laden?
now, are the hostages in Qatar or Gaza?
They're
they're in
in
Gaza.
Gaza, supposedly. And
Well,
Okay, so
it says there are only like 5 that they think are still alive.
less than 20.
Somewhere between 20 and 5. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm very sorry. I don't like this argument with all due respect that we have a base in Qatar, therefore we have to do their bidding. I don't know why we have a
We're
base
not
in
doing their
enemy
bidding.
land. What?
We're not doing their bidding. I disagree that we're doing Qatar's bidding.
They're not, you just said 15 minutes ago, but we have to be nice to Qatar because they gave us a base and they built it for us.
I think you're misrepresenting what I said. I said
Well,
that
that's why I
it's not
asked
to
you.
say that they're not an ally. They built us a base. We have a lot of people there.
They're
And
not
that
an
gives us-
ally because we have a lot of people. We have a lot of people all over the world. What do we have troops in 150 countries?
I don't think we could
180,
say
right?
call any of those countries enemies other than Cuba, where we have a base.
So you think
Depends on your
you
definition.
think Qatar is an ally?
Is there
Do you think they're
definition?
an enemy, or do you think they play
No, I
both
think there's a
sides?
space in between.
I think
there's a
they're an
big space
enemy.
in
I think
between.
they fund terrorism, and I think the only smart thing George W. Bush said, which he himself did not believe because he was busy sending his buddies back to Saudi Arabia, but the only smart thing he said was, "You're with us or you're against us." And Qatar is not with us.
He
They
said,
are
"You're with us or
harboring
you're with the
Hamas.
terrorists."
What?
I
Yeah.
think he said, "You're with us or you're with the terrorists."
Okay,
Correct.
well, okay. Either way, so Qatar is with the terrorists. And if we have this war on terror, which is the most ridiculous term in the history of the world, why aren't we bombing the terrorists in Qatar? We have a war on terror. And
Well, I think there's a lot of
terror-
nuance, and there is a such thing as neutral, or at least nuance, but whatever.
Qatar's not neutral.
I'm not an expert. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on Qatar.
Well, they're not
We are
neutral. They
putting
harbor
pressure
the
on
terrorists.
Qatar. I mean, I think we are putting pressure on Qatar. They've been mediating, and we've been working with them. So I
My
would say
friend,
it's
we put pressure on Iran for 444 days or something. That's not pressure. Pressure is we get them back, you're off the map. And they would have responded to that, which is why the hostages were let go and Reagan was inaugurated. That's pressure. Pressure is now let's keep talking while you're torturing to death
The
hostages.
bad thing is Trump has been making empty threats since he
Yeah,
got
he's
elected
been
years ago
for a while now.
to Hamas, saying there will be hell like years ago if you don't let him go.
He said
And
that
he
like back in
hasn't-
March. Back in March or so, he said something. and
That's
drew
the problem. Making empty
the red
threats.
line, and there was no red
Let
Let
line.
me ask,
Saturday.
let,
That's on
let
Mud
me ask
Trump.
two of you. Let's put you in Trump's seat right now. What are you going to do?
You want to know what I would do to Qatar?
Publicly,
Yeah.
public.
I would start moving my troops into a friendly country.
you know,
How are you
one of the
going to
reasons why
free
the problem.
the hostages?
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, it could work.
How
I
are you
mean,
going to free the hostages?
Very simple. How did we free the hostages from Iran after all that time?
Reagan had balls.
Why did we give up the hostages from Iran?
They gave them up because they believed that Trump or that Reagan would go in. Great.
Right? And you think
How are
Reagan
you
is less
today
crazy
going to
than
get the
Trump?
hostages back?
The same
You're saying
exact
Trump
way.
ain't doing it right.
Reagan didn't even do anything and they gave the hostages back. You really believe
But-
the United States can't make a phone call and get hostages out? I think that's really sad if that's true, and I don't think it's true.
If they really
I
want
do
to, they
think-
can.
Well, he hasn't.
Want it.
Nothing has succeeded to this point.
Instead, what does he do? He takes an airplane from them.
But what are we going to do to them?
What are we going to do to
They're
them?
gonna be. They've already been bombed to hell.
Qatar?
No,
No.
the Hamas.
Qatar?
Then
No,
start by telling-
Iran
by
is a
backing-
country.
Why don't we tell Netanyahu to fumigate Gaza, take it back, and say, you no longer, we tried self-rule for you for 20 years. It didn't work. You're no longer entitled to self-rule. We're going to take it back And if we have to kill every one of you, we will. It's not genocide, it's freaking war. They're sending rockets at Israel every day by the dozens, or maybe more. Stephen, you might be able to tell me how many, but they are sending rockets at Israel every day. Why does Israel have to take it? Why do they have to accept that a state of war is going to exist and we can't fight back? They should, Trump, that's what I would do if I were Trump. I would stop talking about Riviera on the Mediterranean and say, Israel, take it back, do what you can with it, do what you have to the people there. They all support Hamas. And if they don't support Hamas, they should get the hell out and go someplace where they can live free like free people. But they don't. They all support Hamas.
I mean, this is a subject where we're not going to agree. I mean, I'm just not going to agree with. I mean, with several of the things that you said. I mean, I don't think. I think it's more nuanced. I don't think Trump
What's
has.
nuanced about October 7th?
That's one of the reasons why we're not going to agree. I mean, you don't think it's nuanced. I think it's nuanced.
Tell me which part is nuanced. I want to hear.
We've already discussed it. I don't think it's as easy as black. It's not as black and white as you think it is.
What isn't as black and white?
Why?
Why? I don't think Trump can make one phone call and get hostages released in Hamas.
No, but that's what I'm asking. You're saying
I don't think he has that much
are
power.
you saying that Israel was to blame for October 7th in any way?
No,
Oh,
Okay.
You're just saying that Trump doesn't have the power.
I'm saying I don't think it's as simple of an issue as you are.
nobody has that power with Hamas because they're not rational beings.
Dick, that is absolutely not true. That is absolutely not true. If they weren't rational beings, they would not be staying in five-star hotels, stealing billions and billions of dollars from their people. They are 100% rational.
No,
Just like murderers
critical
are rational
mistake.
and don't want
They
to.
made a critical mistake because they thought when they did that attack that other nations would step in and help them, and they miscalculated and they didn't.
I'm talking about the leaders of Hamas who have not risked one whisker on their head, sitting in Qatar in fancy hotels, living off billions of dollars. They're
Ken,
very rational people.
Ken, the whole world has supported Hamas, even if they haven't sent troops in. This whole Israel is committing genocide. Netanyahu is a war criminal.
Yeah,
The whole
Israel is
world
hated more
supports
now
him.
than 3
I
years
don't know
ago.
what they're
That's true.
talking about.
Well,
That's what's
yeah.
absurd.
What my point was that Hamas thought when they did that attack on October 7th that would bring other countries to support them and elevate the war, and that would
Kill
be
Israel,
the start of the
like,
end.
yeah.
Yeah, kill Israel, bring them all in, and that's where they miscalculated. I
It
don't
didn't quite
disagree
work,
with the
yeah.
other comments you're making. I'm just saying when Hamas did that, they made a miscalculation and they were wrong. And what happened since then? Great, I'm glad. But the comments you made, I agree with that too.
So anyway, to answer the questions about what can Trump do, again, someone like Laser, theoretically, if there was someone named Laser, and he wanted to, make a hypothetical, he would say if Trump really wanted to, he would send in 1,000 Navy SEALs and Green Berets to Gaza, and 2 days later, everyone in Hamas would be dead, and the hostages would be back here, ideally alive, and then, everything is fine.
No, here's the problem with that. You could send us in. You could send the SF in. You could send the SEALs in. And yep, they could take out every bit of Hamas. You would not get the hostages, whatever are left alive. What you would get is bodies.
What are we getting now?
In the discussion.
What are we getting now?
But you
What are we
have
getting now?
you've
They're
got
being
half
raped
the
and tortured
Israeli
and killed.
population that says that's not an acceptable answer.
Wait, but here's Stevens, what you're forgetting is you're critical of Trump, but imagine all of everything that's happened if we had a Democrat president. I mean, we wouldn't have a green light to do anything. I mean,
Well, I think we'd all agree it'd be a lot worse. if it
Oh,
were.
it would have been awful.
Yeah.
I mean,
Listen, Trump is arguably the best president for Israel in history. Nobody is denying that.
But still not that good. I mean,
But
but-
listen, he's very good on many, many things. I'm not saying
very
that.
good.
I'm just saying that to say Qatar is an ally is an absolute ridiculous lie
Yeah,
because
but
it's putting a lie to all of American policy since 2001, which was all based on how Ed just worded it. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Period.
Israel would not have been bombing Iran if there was a Democrat president.
Of course not. 100% not. We were arming Iran. We were giving them money and we were giving them stuff. I have no doubt about that.
I think Trump taking that like $400 million or $1 billion airplane from Qatar, that makes me more comfortable than like anything else so far that we've been discussing. That was really weird, and I have a lot of issues with that.
Well, I don't have an issue with that since I mean, we've done that in the past before. I mean, it's not
What
like
we
it was some
taken?
new thing.
What have we taken from the past from other governments like that?
I think I read some articles where we've had other examples of that in the past. I mean, wasn't brand new. I mean, that's was my big criticism of the press.
I'm not sure from a country like that.
I don't think so. Maybe from an ally. Yeah, we took the Statue of Liberty from France.
I don't know. This goes back to Ed's contention that Trump believes that we just create economic prosperity and everything with these countries, that everything's going to be a kumbaya, and it just doesn't work that way, you know. So now he's got no choice but to
And by the way, what
kind
else
of
can Trump
play
do
both,
to
both sides
Qatar?
of the issue.
Excuse me, how does Qatar support itself? With computer chips?
Oil?
Oil. And Trump could put them out of business very, very quickly by just pumping more oil. Just like he destroyed Russia that way by pumping more oil, he could get rid of OPEC. America, I believe, has more oil than almost any country in the world, correct?
Okay.
It's amazing. He stopped
That's a current estimate.
Okay, and now we're not even talking about nuclear power about when we have an expert. So could he destroy Qatar? Yes. And
So
Saudi
Trump.
Arabia.
Trump doesn't believe in that. I mean, he's not. I mean, he's not going to do that.
I'm
He's
sorry?
anti-war. Trump is the anti-war president. I mean, I would say Iran is the exception, but he didn't go in. Well, he did go in with a plane, but Trump's not going to do that unless you've got strong arguments in favor of that.
No, I
That's
don't think
not
he should go
who
to
he is.
war with Qatar, but I think he could collapse Qatar. He could say, I will collapse your economy.
Well, that's what he said to some of these other countries that were fighting, and he claims
Tariffs.
he solved all these 7 wars around the world. You know what I mean?
Well,
he
he
just
deserves
apparently
credit.
hasn't been able to solve the 2 biggest ones.
He deserves some credit. Come on. I mean,
He
these
deserved a
countries
lot
that
of
went to
credit.
the
Ken, he deserves
Yeah,
a ton of
absolutely.
credit. Are you kidding? This is a show that is 1,000% thankful that Trump won the election. And I say, at Trump at his very, very worst beyond anybody's imagination, thank God we don't have Kamala Harris. So nobody's questioning, is Trump good? Trump's very good. But I don't think he's right on certain things.
Of course.
So
Well, when I'm looking at somebody, I'm looking at their net value, and I think his net value is
there's no
very
question
positive.
about that, Ken.
Very
Yeah,
positive.
we're all with
I
you.
mean,
on that.
I've been saying for a while he's the best president in the last 100 years, but that's still a really low bar.
Well,
I think we
really.
probably about had 3 in the last 100 years.
it's funny. I heard that somebody
Coolidge, Reagan, Trump.
somebody said that Reagan, and I don't know if this is true or not, that Reagan quietly thanked Israel when they bombed the Osirak nuclear reactor. I know that publicly they made a whole bunch of statements against it. I had not heard that Reagan secretly thanked him for it. Did anybody else hear that?
No.
I think I heard, I think that rings a bell for me.
So
It rings the bell that we had a lot of countries secretly happy that that was bombed.
right. Now I have to tell you, I happen to believe, and you don't know my opinions of Netanyahu, which are rather complicated. I happen to believe that Trump is more right-wing on Israel than Netanyahu is. And I think Netanyahu is the one sabotaging. I think Trump has given him permission several times to do what he wants. And Netanyahu, my line about Netanyahu, he's the best speaker in the world and doesn't believe a word he says. And Netanyahu is the guy who knows fine. That's actually what I believe about this.
Well, I don't think that's his. That's not the way I perceive him.
I'm an Israeli citizen who listens to Israeli radio all day still. And Netanyahu, he's the best they have by far. People always ask me that. They don't have anybody close to him, but he still does nothing. He talks a lot. So, whatever. Again, he's by far the best they're going to get. Oh.
You need to get less jaded, Stephen, because you're a great guy. I mean, come
We're all
on.
pessimists here.
No, I got to tell you something. Israel is one country whose politics I do understand quite well. I'm obsessed with politics. I'm still obsessed with Israeli politics. Israel is a messed up, not necessarily straight country in many, many ways for another time. But again, I think Trump is pushing Netanyahu, and I think Trump is frustrated that Netanyahu won't do it. And I think part of Trump's vacillation is because of that. He'll call up Netanyahu and say, Bibi, do whatever the hell you want. Get this off my plate, destroy them. And Netanyahu thumps around for another couple of weeks and does absolutely nothing. And Trump is like, you know what? You guys going to do this? I can't back it anymore. And then it goes in circles.
Okay, there's probably a bunch of these issues, but it seems like Trump gave Iran a deadline, and then the day after the deadline, Israel started bombing them. So I mean,
No, I'm talking about
how did-
Gaza. I'm talking about Gaza.
well,
Israel is not really fighting Gaza for 2 years. And the problem, I don't think, is Trump. I think the problem is Netanyahu.
Maybe Netanyahu has a lot of pressure.
He
And
has a
unlike
lot
Trump,
of
he's
pressure.
actually
He has
sitting
to
there
be-
next to
and
the
whatever.
Israelis.
Israeli politics may always look simple, but I think Trump has been better on Israel in many ways than Israel has been.
I mean, if Trump were in Netanyahu's shoes, facing the actual pressure in the room from the cabinet, he might be even worse. Who knows? I'm sure
It's
there's a lot
not
of
the
pressure.
cabinet, it's whatever. Israel has a phenomenal system of government where the attorney general has all the power in the country and holds indictments over every single politician's heads for 10, 15, 20 years. And that's why Ariel Sharon gave back Gaza to get out of an indictment. Netanyahu, I just saw today, right before the show, Netanyahu again asked permission from the Supreme Court to not have to testify 3 days a week in his defense because of all the stuff going on in the world, and they said no. Now, can you imagine any other country where the prime minister in a time of war has to go to court?
well, I agree with that. That's the big problem with Israel is it's like their Supreme Court has the ability to veto everything.
Everything, and their attorney general can veto everything. She is the God of Israel. So Israel's got lots of issues if we ever want to do an Israel show. Anyway, guys, we're way, way over time because we're having way too much fun. Let's do real quickly. First of all, Ken, the floor is yours for however you want to use it since you're our guest.
Okay, well,
Did you allow him to mention his book yet?
No, I gave him the floor.
I feel like I'm at the Air Club meeting and I have a really loud wig. So, but thank y'all for having me. I have really enjoyed talking with y'all, arguing with y'all, berating and getting berated. It's been a lot of fun. I would just go back and say it's a very serious day. Charlie Kirk has struck me to my core. And I don't know if I know him really well. I did find out that he died really early because I have a friend that was working for him. And so I called his dad and he said, first thing he said was he's dead. And so I knew early that he had passed and I just waited for confirmation. And it's really affected me because it makes me question our country, makes our question our politics even more. And like we've said so many times today, the sincerity, our democracy is based upon the willing of the losers to be governed. And we've got one party right now that when they lose, they do not have, they will not consent to be governed unless you agree to what they want.
Plus, a lot of us won't speak out.
Well, because if you do, you're going to get attacked. And if you do, you're going to get prosecuted. And if you do, then you're going to get shot at, it looks like. So there's reasons for that. And that's what they're trying, that's the message that these radicals are trying to send today. But other than that, I go around talking about criminal justice reform, bad bail reform, and there's a lot of that we've talked about today. And if people want more information about me or our organization, they go to pvtx.com. We have a website, we have a blog where we post highlight important stories on criminal justice issues. We also have our own podcast called The Belt Post, which if you can get it from our menu or you can just go straight to thebeltpost.com where we talk about criminal justice issues and what's good bail reform and what's bad bail. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, a quick question for you.
And I'm gonna
lawyers.
turn down your thanks because the pleasure was totally mine. So go ahead.
Quick question for the two lawyers, as we're on Charlie Kirk, who's been watching here. Law enforcement is calling it now a political assassination. Does that have any other legal ramifications than just murder?
No, that's intended for the midterm elections coming up.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the answer, but I wouldn't think that there's any difference. Although, I mean, there are specific criminal statutes for murders of the or attempted murders of the president and certain high-ranking officials. But obviously, Charlie Kirk was not in that position.
Now, apparently there was a federal crime involved in the Charlotte killing, which a lot of people weren't aware of. So I'm just
Yes.
curious, are there any federal crimes hiding when you shoot somebody in this type of situation?
Well, I mean, the FBI took the alleged shooter into custody, so there must be some federal hook for jurisdiction.
Mhm.
They consider something a hate crime. Is that on the federal level?
They're going to look for ways to take over the case because, especially in these soft on crime areas where they have Soros DAs, and they don't think that they'll treat them the way they should be
This
treated.
was Utah.
You know, last week
Yeah,
we asked,
That's
there was
true.
some talk about Trump going up against Soros head on. I don't know what happened with that. We talked about it a little bit last week. That was quite an interesting idea. So, Mike, what you got?
So I'm sorry, I missed like probably about the first 20, 25 minutes. So just real quick on the arena killing, the Ukrainian girl on the train. I think my initial reaction to that was watching some of the people on the train do nothing. But I kind of backtracked on that because the more I thought about it, and as a psychology major in college, I mean, I learned about the Kitty Genovese killing, which was a famous murder from back in, I think, the 50s or 60s. And a lot of people were in their homes and they heard gunshots and she was screaming and they're witnessing her basically being murdered and nobody did anything. Nobody called, nobody came to help, nobody did anything. And I'm looking at all these people and I'm saying, maybe that effect was going on for some of them.
That was 1964. This is also the Daniel Penny effect.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, there's lots of reasons in people's heads why they don't want to get involved. You know what I mean? And one is your own survival.
They did get involved at the end of the video. They got involved.
I saw that too. There were people who came in later. One guy took off his shirt. I think it happened so fast, and a couple of the people that were sitting in the back that had no idea that she was even stabbed. I think that the two that were closest to her, they realized something happened. The one woman, she could have been scared out of her wits. But I think, again, it's hard for us to put into our shoes how if you live in these crime-infested urban areas, your only goal every day is just get the hell home and be alive. And so I have to give the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to, judge them, prejudge them without hearing what some of these people had to say, what was going through their head.
Also have to be concerned that they're next. I mean, he just walked by and stabbed somebody. I mean, they may not have seen it, but eventually, I mean, then he starts saying, I stabbed the white girl. I got the white girl. And so then people started realizing, and then they ran and, started screaming or yelling started. And I mean, it was just so fast. I'm not critical of people's reactions when something happens that fast, especially when you watch it, they are jumping in and showing compassion really quickly. And I mean, at that point, nothing could be done.
I mean, listen, I don't know what could have been done in Charlie Kirk's case. If we have a better idea what could have been done and what led up to the fact of the Ukrainian girls killing. Well, it shows you that we need to have the right to freaking defend ourselves, no matter what the situation is. And there was the other recent killing too, it was in a school. I mean, all these stories come at us so fast it's hard to keep up. But I'm saying, the left cries gun control every time there's one of these mass killings. Well, what the hell's a gun-free school zone? That's gun control. You got it. And where do these people go every freaking time? They go to where there's no resistance, where they know that no harm is gonna come to them, and it's shooting like monkeys in the barrel. Listen.
Well, then you've got
Parenthetically, I think that there was a school shooting in Colorado today too. But go ahead, Ken.
Well, I mean, there was a Democrat congressman today on a podcast saying that the job of the police was not to stop crime; it's just to investigate it and solve it after the fact.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
isn't that a
Ken, you
Supreme
sure he was
Court
a Democrat,
ruling?
not a libertarian?
That was a Supreme Court ruling.
No,
technically,
it's
they don't
not.
have to stop crime. They don't have
they
a duty to
have
stop
to
crime.
step in. They don't have a duty to put themselves at risk. But I mean, that's one of the functions of being present is to discourage crime. That's one of the jobs just from being there.
So anyway, I mean, to Ken's point, obviously the Charlie Kirk thing, I mean, it's sick to my stomach. I mean, it reminds me of Breitbart to an extent. Obviously, he wasn't killed.
I heard that today
Heart
too.
attack. It's just it's a big loss because he was a brave, gutsy, freaking guy to go into the college campuses and put himself out there, knowing how vicious some of these people could be.
It's so sad
I mean,
because you remember all the times Coulter was driven off a stage and Ben
yeah,
Shapiro was driven off a stage, and so
right.
many of these people.
Yeah, and listen, I said it in the chat. I mean, I worked for Americans for Prosperity, as you guys know. I went to countless rallies on the Hill here in New Jersey, Tea Party events, you name it, and it was open. But now, if all that kind of stuff was in going on now, I'd have second thoughts about going everywhere, just like I have
As
second
would your wife.
about going. I have second thoughts about going into New York City. I don't want to go into New York City now. I don't want to go to Times Square. I feel like I'm putting my life in my hand. So, that's kind of where we are, unfortunately. But we should have the full right to defend ourselves. And it's sad that all this stuff came up. I was almost going to talk about foul ball the other day and what happened at a baseball game, but
There'll
I
be
guess we're
another
beyond
chance
that.
for that. Okay, Ed, take us home, please.
I I can't tell you guys how much I cried this afternoon after hearing the news. Actually, my first reaction was absolute rage and anger. I was finishing up a training at work, and my son, who wanted to join us today but is apparently not going to be able to, uh, texted me that Charlie Kirk was shot. And then all of a sudden, my phone started blowing up with all sorts of messages, including our little private chat. And my initial reaction was just absolute anger. This is a guy who didn't hurt a fly. He was a gentle giant who was resolute and firm, but in no way mean, never hurt anybody. And like I said, I started off really angry, and then within about 2 hours or so, the anger started turning to grief. I was a little late. That's why we're pushing a little late on the show. Uh, I, I almost couldn't get a hold of myself to do the show today. Not that I would ever think of skipping, but it took a great effort for me to pull myself together. I've had the TV on without sound, but with closed captioning during our show, and I've seen all sorts of tributes to Charlie. One in particular sort of caught my eye as we were going. Uh, it was a clip of Rush Limbaugh uh, explaining his meeting with Charlie when he was first setting up Turning Point USA, I guess probably around 10 or 12 years ago. And he was just so effusive in his praise of Charlie. And he said, I don't want to jinx this, but he looks like somebody who could really be a great person. And just knowing what Rush meant to me and knowing what Charlie Kirk has meant to me, uh, I almost started crying on the show. Um, Charlie not only touched me, but my son, who is a very apolitical kind of person, knew him and didn't know him personally, but knew him well from TikTok and from all sorts of videos. Like I said, he was the one. My son was the one who gave me the first notification, and Charlie Kirk touched so many people and touched the right people in the right ways, and it's just a devastating loss to me, and not just a devastating loss, but as anyone who's listened to this entire podcast can hear, uh, I feel like it's an active war against all good people in America. This was not just the murder of Charlie Kirk. This was this was a declaration of war on everybody on this podcast and all people that think like we do. And we need to recognize that and act accordingly. So that's my closing for the show today.
Amen. As the marriage therapist on this show, I kind of joked about it a few minutes ago. I've often said, Martha said to George, "Why do you have to go out tonight? Why can't you be like all the other husbands and stay home with me? Why are you risking your neck?" Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think all of us who are married get this from our spouses, and maybe for good reason. Why are you putting your neck out there? And if that stops another 10 people from talking and fighting, it's another big victory for the
You
left.
know how many times my wife has told me to not do podcasts and articles and books and stuff and speeches and events and go
I'm
places.
telling
do
you,
stuff
I
out loud.
assume Martha said it to George, and I assume Jefferson's wife said it to him. Why are you sticking your neck out? And then they're going to point to Charlie Kirk, and that's the point. We are silenced by it. So anyway, let's wrap up. We will be back next week the same time, and we hope to have such a wonderful panel. Ken, that's a hint to you.
You're welcome back anytime. Thank you so much for
Really
spending so
enjoyed
much time with
having
us.
you.
Thanks.
And
Good luck with your book.
yeah,
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for
check
having
your
me.
website. Have a great night, everybody.